I've seen it all before. The job tends to do that to you. Makes you unsurprised at anything. This is a typical assignment. Perry got stuck and called me in. I've been told this murder happened 24 hours ago. The trail is growing cold on the passing of a certain Jane Fletcher, 32 years of age, regular citizen and cleaning lady. My knowledge ends there. Then again, no one would just kick some innocent soul's bucket without a reason.
The crime scene is down the hall on the left.
I ask her what she can tell me about Jane. Peevish subject. I learned more about Jane than I wanted. I learned that she and Cordelia were the best of friends, and that Jane liked expensive things and money to spend on these items, which made her a huge spender. I learned that she liked everything she didn't have and hated her cleaning job and wanted something more. Also that she liked flowers, lace, diamonds, Chanel perfume, Monet, had a Pomeranian named Bobo, didn't clean corners, and was single. Cordelia, of course, says this all through tears. She also talks quickly, like she's incredibly anxious. It seems she cares a lot for the late Jane Fletcher. Eventually, I have to stop the poor girl mid-sentence to get going to see Perry. She says she understands and doesn't want me to be late for the inspector. So, what are the details, Perry?
Ah, Miss Cole, you're finally here. It took you long enough.
It seemed that Miss Fletcher had been murdered in the office of Adrian Keene, one of the owners of this tiny establishment, a horticultural/office center where they do stuff like mutate plants and document it for history or some such. Perry believes that someone on the inside killed Miss Fletcher because the place isn't well known enough to be burglarized. Miss Fletcher's body was discovered by Miss James Cordelia, that mousy receptionist, early yesterday morning. How complacent of her not to mention that. Autopsy says Miss Fletcher died instantly from head trauma and is suspected of being hit over the head with a tacky paperweight that had been taken from the scene. Adrian Keene realized that his paperweight of a rhino he got in New York City was missing, and that's Perry's suspicion of the murder weapon's identity because they didn't find the paperweight on the premises. And Perry thinks that the murderer didn't mean to kill her, so the tacky rhino had their fingerprints on it, hence it being MIA. Perry's weirdest suspects are Cordelia James, the receptionist, Adrian Keene, the office owner which Jane was killed in and business owner, and Nero Doyle, Adrian's business partner and childhood friend. Perry says that they acted interestingly odd and that he thinks that one of them did it. Perry confides to me that one of the reasons he suspects Adrian Keene is because while searching his office for clues, a gun was found in the drawer of his desk. When asked about it, Mr. Keene always dodged the questions. We'll have to see what I think of all this.
I believe it is time you vet some of our suspects.
Is something wrong, Inspector?
I'd like to ask you and your bosses a couple more questions so Miss Cole here can hear your testimonies for herself. Is Mr. Keene and Mr. Doyle here?
Hello, Inspector Perry. How's the crime solving coming?
He's calm. Why?
Why is that bumbling inspector still here? What is the meaning of this, Inspector? I thought you'd be gone searching and discovering Jane's murder by now.
A friendly fellow, that Mr. Keene. Perry tries to explain why we were there, him and I, saying that he asked me to look at the crime scene before they cleaned it up this afternoon to see if I saw any last-second details they might have missed, and for him to ask more questions for me to hear their testimonies from their own lips. Mr. Keene seems to find that amusing, with Perry admitting to needing outside help. Perry sees I wasn't going to defend myself on that comment. Not my style. Here, Perry introduces me to his three biggest, most suspicious suspects. Each in turn nods to me as Perry tells me who's who, as if I didn't already. I watch each one carefully to see how they feel about having a detective involved in the investigation now. Perry says that I'm an old friend of the PD and that I'm good at what I do. I have to try hard not to smile at this because I know Perry loathes asking me for advice on crime scenes, especially murders.
Is this gonna take long?
Once the three suspects were seated comfortably inside our interrogation room, Perry decided to take Cordelia first to be questioned. I look at Mr. Keene and Mr. Doyle. Cordelia says that she is usually one of the first people in the building every day. She opened the front door at 8 o'clock sharp yesterday morning and went inside. She was alone. She turned on her computer and printed a document from an email that came from Mr. Keene. She put it into a folder, then went toward his office. But when she got there... Cordelia seems incredibly unhappy about getting to this part in her story. She shakes as she continues and says that Mr. Doyle, Nero, happened to come into the building then, and he ran to her scream. He looked into the room and saw Jane's unconscious body.
I was about to go see if Jane was alive, but Nero said to leave the scene alone. He said to call the police, that it was too late. After I called, he made me sit in a chair and take deep breaths. He stayed with me until you shut up, Inspector.
When Cordelia was excused, Mr. Keene demanded to be next, even though Mr. Doyle was next in the sequence of the turn of events. Perry compiled graciously, even though I can see that his teeth are grinding together. Mr. Keene conveniently doesn't have much of a story or alibi. He says that he had arrived for work by the time that Jane's body was being taken away. This is around 10 o'clock, 2 hours after the body was discovered. Must be exciting to see an employee leaving the building in a body bag. I wonder if he's holding anything back, just trying to get through the questions. I watch him closely.
Nothing else happened?
I wasn't even here when the murder was done. Would you quit looking at me like you really think I killed Jane?
And the gun in the drawer?
For self-defense.
Defense from what?
It turns out Mr. Keene has a license for his gun, but he refused to say what he needed the protection from. Mr. Doyle seems very sure of his story. He tells us everything that Cordelia said to us. He had been walking into the building when Cordelia screamed. He ran in to see what was wrong and saw Jane. He told Cordelia to get the police and not to touch anything. He acts as if he's talking about the weather, not murder. I respect him for his coolness.
After Cordelia called the police, I stayed with her, and the police came to investigate Jane's body and stuff.
After the interrogation, Perry asks everyone to stay here in the building in case I have more questions. Mr. Keene doesn't like this. Cordelia nods quickly, and Mr. Doyle shrugs. After everyone leaves the interrogation room, Perry looks at me and asks what I want to do next. I tell him I want to check out the surrounding rooms for clues.
What if Jane's murderer is never found, Nero? One of us here must be the killer. This place is too tiny to have a random burglar come in and kill Jane, and why would the police bring in a detective otherwise?
Don't worry about it.
But what if the murderer strikes again?
They won't.
What?
What is this? Why wasn't I informed?
I've never seen that until today. Where'd you get those?
Nero's office.
What's with going through my office?
How long have you been getting these letters? I don't ask what the letters are about. I don't think that is the best approach. Of course, Perry thinks differently. He keeps shouting until his face turns blue. I did at least get the information that both Mr. Keene and Mr. Doyle have been getting the letters for the last few weeks. I leave after learning this. I think that Mr. Keene is not one to admit to anything without a fight, so I decided to investigate where Jane usually works while Perry's face gets bluer. The fourth book on the left. So this is why Mr. Keene needed a gun. I watch everyone's reactions carefully. I want to see especially what Mr. Keene thinks of this.
What is that, Miss Cole? You are here to solve a murder, not to do, light reading.
You'll find this book quite interesting, Perry. Drugs and blackmail are what conclude to this murder. Jane must have been blackmailing Mr. Keene and Mr. Doyle on their secret. This is not only a horticultural and office center, but also a place that sells drugs. That's why even though the establishment is small, they have enough money to pay for all their expenses. Did Jane pull you into this, Cordelia?
She really wanted my help. She said she wanted more money, and she'd stumbled upon a great way to get some.
So you and her sent the blackmailing letters to Mr. Keene and Mr. Doyle to scare them, then...
Yeah. Jane said she was going to confront them soon on the drugs.
And then you killed her.
Do you have any proof, Miss Cole?
Your proof was given to you from Nero Doyle himself. I looked pointedly at my suspect. Did you touch the body before the police arrived? He seems bewildered and a bit annoyed. He says of course he didn't. I turned back to Perry. He just confessed, I believe. Perry doesn't understand. As per usual, I have to explain things a bit more simply. I asked Perry if he remembers what Mr. Doyle said during his statement.
I was about to go see if Jane was alive, but Nero said to leave the scene alone. He said to call the police, that it was too late.
Mr. Doyle says he never touched Jane's body, so why did he tell Cordelia to call the police instead of an ambulance? Perry's eyes start to show understanding of what I mean. Slowly, I see as everyone in the room gets that look in their eye as they realize what I mean. They all watch me. The only explanation is that Mr. Doyle knew Jane was already dead. Mr. Keene admits to everything instantly. I get the feeling that he's only admitting to get a lighter sentence, but we get our information. Mr. Keene says that he and Mr. Doyle started the drug trafficking a couple years ago because their business was failing and they needed fast cash. Of course, it was so fast, they didn't stop when they had originally decided they were going to. He also adds that he had no idea who was blackmailing him and Mr. Doyle, and that he didn't know who killed Jane. That, I hate to admit, I believe. Cordelia breaks down in tears as she's handcuffed, and Mr. Keene went to the police car with dignity right alongside his friend. As Mr. Doyle passes me, I ask him why he did it. Why did he have to kill Jane? Mr. Doyle seems to ponder that question. He then says his last words to me. It was just business. I have a hunch that we won't know the complete truth from Mr. Nero Doyle, or even from Mr. Adrian Keene. I guess some things always remain a mystery. But out of all of them, Nero Doyle has the hardest consequences to face. For not only had he given people the opportunity to waste their lives away, he'd also taken one's life deliberately. Perry and I watch as all three of them are taken away to await their trials. Then Perry thanks me as I prepare to go. He gives grudging praise of how he couldn't have done it without me. I smile. I thank him as well and open the door to leave. I really have nothing else to say. It's just another case to put under my belt. I don't get too excited after solving a murder. It's just how I am.
Oh yeah, you have to be serious. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. I was trying to think dead puppy, dead puppy.